So for each of these, I'll cover what we're trying to accomplish, do's and don'ts, and then I'll walk through examples that I've been done in the past. It seemed like people thought the examples were the most helpful, and especially they thought the idea around my part-timer idea was kind of interesting. So I actually pulled a bunch of like old stuff that I used that part-timer one just so people can kind of get a feel for it. This was the first landing page that I made for the part-time workers project that I was working on. Now, this is slightly different. And honestly, if I was going to do this again, I wouldn't do any of these things. So I didn't use Webflow or Card or any of that kind of stuff because, again, I didn't take my own advice and I should have. I ended up just like making a simple kind of like, honestly, it was a static website and I just kind of like wrote the HTML myself. This was the entire page. Let me break down kind of a couple pieces of like what are typically in homepages. And once you know these pieces, you'll see them in every homepage. Honestly, all homepages and landing pages are like very formulaic and kind of like exactly the same. They typically have some hero image is what we call it, which is, for me, this one is the phone, which shows an app that actually never existed. So that was just like a mock-up I made. So that's typically the hero image. It kind of shows what the app is. I have a logo. I just wrote out the word single shift, and I think I found an icon online. Like it was like a word art icon, and I just like put it in there. The headline, which for me was work when you want, earn what you need. That's what we typically call as the headline. It's the highest priority. It's the first thing people say. You want it to be like one sentence that kind of encapsulate why people should care about this. When I wrote this, I mean, I really thought about it as like working when you want, earn what you need. And I thought it was kind of like catchy. And so I went with that. The description text is the one underneath the headline. So underneath work when you want, earn when you need. That's like a catchy phrase. And then the description should be like what the product actually is. So in here, I called it single shift. Single shift is the fastest and easiest way to find temporary and permanent food and beverage jobs. And so that was the description. So you can kind of see it's like, hey, you land on this page. Why you should care about it is because you can work when you want and earn what you need. And then the description is like, okay, how does that actually kind of work? And then I have this button that says sign up for early access. I'll show you later versions of this that I kind of like changed. Like I got rid of the early access part because that didn't do anything for me. But you'll see kind of like this header piece in most web pages, and you can kind of keep it that way. The why work on single shift, that part to me was just like me just trying to layer in value propositions around like flexibility and convenience and learn new skills. There's 6 of them because frankly, at this stage, I didn't know what was important and I didn't know how to prioritize them. I just kind of guessed, right? So I was like, okay, maybe there's like these 6 reasons people would do it. And I just put them in an order that I thought it was and then put it on the page. Available jobs underneath is literally, it's just like dishwasher, server, like busser, that kind of stuff. And there's nothing else on the page. This is the whole page. Like that's it, right? I think with this version of the page, I probably got maybe a couple hundred people to sign up, 200-300 people to sign up with this page. And so there's really not much to it, right? You guys can kind of see like, you can conceivably get this up in kind of like a short period of time. And most of it is writing actually. The entire website consisted of this landing page, and you click the button and you get this, which again, honestly, you could have just done this through Airtable. And if I did it again, I would just do it through Airtable. Like you don't need to kind of like do this, but that's it. That's all it was. So I got a couple hundred people to sign up with just these 2 pages, and then lots of ads, which I will show you guys in a bit, but these were the only 2 pages that were part of this. So I went back to my Facebook ad manager, and I should have taken a screenshot of this, but I have probably 25 different campaigns, and each campaign has probably like, I don't know, 5 to 10 ad sets. So if you do the math, I made at least 50, 70 kind of variation of kind of these ads. And so I tried a lot, and every week I would do a new variation, right? So I'll talk about these in Iterate. I have a big wall of them. But these are the 2 I started with.
Question actually on this, because someone asked this like just now.
Yeah.
When you're talking about like 3 to 5 ad campaigns, are you talking about ad campaigns or ad sets?
I forget what the difference is in Facebook now, but I think about it this way. I actually broke it out. So I know people who have done this a lot. I actually broke it out so every campaign was its own ad. And the reason why is because I wanted to control how it did targeting. So every ad got a certain number of impressions. If you put a bunch of ads together in the same campaign, Facebook will try to just optimize drive to whichever one has the best conversion, I think. And so it'll automatically kind of like dictate the flow. And so some ads won't get a lot of impressions or whatever. I broke it out so every campaign was the same. And the reason why was, again, I'm trying to learn. And so I'm forcing Facebook to show people the ad, whether it performs well or not. For my purposes, each one of these squares is an ad. And so just think about it that way. So I probably try 50 to 70 of these. I forget what the nomenclature of Facebook is. So let me break down the ads a little bit. This is obviously Facebook ads. Instagram ads are slightly different, but they're all kind of like more or less the same. You can see that the copy at the top is the same, right? And I initially went, and this is very typical actually, and it ends up not working the best. When you are starting out, people tend to write copy like they're trying to explain how it works all the time. And this is clearly what I'm doing here too, and this is what everybody does, and it tends to underperform most of the time. So this is very descriptive. Restaurants and cafes post shifts they need to fill. You choose the ones you want. It's like, okay, like a user would have to infer why that's valuable to them, right? It just says what it does. And then I have a picture of an app, and then the other one I have a picture of a person, and then you can see that the links go to the same place. Find food and beverage work that fits you. And I think I said learn more, right? Yeah, I said learn more on both. A couple of things you can obviously change here. You can change the text at the top. You can change the pictures. You can change the find food and beverage. And you can actually change the call to action, this like learn more thing. And so you can kind of play around with all of this stuff. My hypotheses for both of these is I just wanted to get a sense of, do people respond to a screenshot of the app, or do they respond to like a person working in like a cafe? And the thing I was trying to figure out was I can do a lot more experiments in both sides, but I wanted to know, should I go more into showing people how it works, or is it more kind of like showing people in the actual environment, right? So those were the two directions. I could have changed everything about this, but I just decided to like just start with these images. It was easy, kind of like get these going that way. In the iteration part, I'll show you a whole wall of like different stuff that I tried.
So is a hypothesis, for example, a value proposition? So let's say you highlight a different value proposition, or could it be like, let's say, you're testing the creative on this. So what exactly is it?
Great question. I was obviously testing the images, which in hindsight was like kind of a dumb thing to test. Like, it's just not that valuable. I'm like, okay, picture of a person does better. Like, who cares? Actually, I thought this morning when I was I was pulling these images. I should have tested the why work on single shift. You see each of these blocks, each of those should have been an ad. I should have had a flexibility ad. I should have a convenience ad. I should have a learn new skills ad, grow your network, build your reputation, get paid weekly. Each of those should have been ad, because I'm trying to figure out which one of these is most valuable. That's what I should have done.
Okay. Maybe the last one before we kind of move on. How do you measure success after like a launch of this ad campaign?
I'm just actually trying to learn, right? So the reason why you want to have multiple ads is you want to see how ads work relative to each other. So let's say I ran these two ads. Let's say the one on the right worked twice as well. Okay, all I can infer from that is the one on the right worked twice as well. I don't actually know if the one on the right actually works. So it could be that the one on the right is better than the one on the left, but they both suck. I don't know. It could be that the one on the right is better than the one on the left, and they're both amazing. So that's why you kind of keep like working on it to kind of like see how it goes. And you can kind of like start triangulating. The other way that you want to think about this is you do think about the CAC on some level. And what I mean by that is if it costs you $200 to get one person to sign up, I mean, that just is like obviously problematic, right? You would then need to be able to believe that you can drive that down to kind of like sub $2 or something like that in order to kind of like do it. So you just have to think if that's the case. I mean, just think about like, I mean, the thing I used to think about here was, I think for I charged 20%, I think. So let's say if somebody worked 1 hour on the platform, it was $10, I made $2. So then I was just like doing the modeling out of like, okay, if I make $2 per hour and like, let's say 25% of the people that sign up actually kind of like work a job, and like, I can just do the math on like, okay, how much am I making per sign up that I get? And like, how is that kind of like mapped? Now, all hypotheses. I didn't actually know how many people were going to like work. I didn't know any of that kind of stuff, but like, I'm just trying to kind of piece together, like forecasting what I think would probably happen to kind of come to a solution. And those exercises often helped me understand the product better. Maybe one thing that is helpful that I used to do, my low key way to figure out whether an idea was good before I do any kind of validation is I would just think through the business model and I'd be like, how hard is it to make $1 million? And what I mean by that is, let's say I'm running this shift thing. If I have to do 10 million shifts to make $1 million, I'm like, damn, that feels like a lot of work. I got to do 10 million shifts. That means I got to get like 50 million people, like users to like, You just kind of do the math backwards and you're like, that is not enough money for how much work this would take. And so I kind of think about it that way. Sometimes when you kind of like do the math, you're like, oh, I can make $1 million if I just sign up like 1,000 people and they each pay me this much. I'm like, okay, then that like looks promising. So I don't know, maybe that's like a side kind of like, that's like a whole different kind of like take, but you can just do like quick Excel spreadsheet, just like math on like, okay, how would I make $1 million? Let me kind of go through this really quickly. This was just a an iteration of the landing page that I had before. The things you'll find that's slightly different here is obviously I changed it from sign up to get early access to get started. That made actually quite a big difference. And then I put a iPhone behind. And the reason why I put an iPhone behind is when I originally started, I thought the people that were going to take part-time jobs were, frankly, I thought they were just like lower income, kind of like socioeconomically and stuff. And so I thought most of them would probably use Android. What's interesting is that in Singapore, what I learned is lots of people have iPhones, and a lot of people that were signing up were like in uni, basically. And so it wasn't that they didn't have any money; they all had iPhones. And one of my hypotheses was that maybe some people were signing up because they only thought an Android phone, and so I just threw an iPhone here and just be like, "Hey, look." I think later stage I actually flipped it because I saw in Singapore that like more people like use iPhones, so I just like flipped it or whatever. But this was like a small iteration. I didn't honestly change this page very much. That wasn't the thing that like made that big of a difference. The page converted really well, so I started adding more fields into the registration because I wanted to get an understanding of like, okay, how much experience are the people that are signing up? Are we just getting people that are like never done this before? Are we getting people with real experience? Can I get a phone number? Because I want to be able to like call. I started doing work eligibility because I was like, I don't know, some like, are these people that sign up actually have the eligibility to kind of work? So my first sign up page was like just drive signups. Will anybody sign up for this? And then once I got to this part, I had probably a couple thousand people who had signed up. And so I was a little bit more greedy at this point. I was like, okay, I can get people to sign up for this. Am I getting the right people? And so I just started adding all of these fields for people to kind of like fill out, so I could kind of like see. And I wasn't afraid because I'd already gotten people to sign up. So I started adding more stuff. Okay, I just took some of the ads that I did, the many ads, and I just kind of like made a gallery so people could like get a feel for kind of like different ones. So the top left is kind of like what you would kind of like normally see. And then the top right, you can see some of it is kind of flip flop. So, on the left, work when you want, earn what you need. I made that so it was exactly the same as the landing page. Then find food and beverage work that fits you is another part. I still use similar images. The bottom middle part I thought was a variation that I did. And again, I was trying to make it people feel like they were the people in the image. And so one of the things I had is in the top right, you'll find this out at Unsplash. Unsplash basically has mostly white people, if I'm being honest, because it's a Western kind of like thing. And so I just started thinking, I was like, I wonder if I just used like Asian people in the images, whether it would like come through more, right? And that's actually specifically why I bought singleshift.sg and singleshift.my, because I feel like a lot of times people in Southeast Asia, they don't know if products are for them. And so having the domain name for me actually was like, hey, this is like for Malaysia, and this is for Singapore, right? You should like sign up for it. And so I wanted to kind of like build that in. And so that's why I kind of like switched some of these images. I think if you look at the bottom right, the second one from the right, it says single shift allows me to pick up shifts at interesting restaurants. I started talking about it from the voice of like the person that is kind of like doing it. The most interesting thing is the ad all the way in the bottom right. So read the copy on that ad. It's like, need to buy a gift for Bay, but short on money. Find an open shift through us so you can work whenever you want, earn what you need. I didn't actually even write that. My sister-in-law, who used to work in PR for Xbox, I was like, hey, can you just like, she's a good writer. And I was like, can you write different kind of like ad copies? I'm trying to do this thing. She's like, sure. And she like threw this one in there. And when I saw it, I was like, she was like, oh yeah, I don't know. I was just having a bit of fun. You said it was like young people. I don't know. Let's just like throw the word Bay in there and like see what happens. And she's like, you don't have to put it in though. And I was like, let's throw it in, right? The bottom right ad was, I think, 30% of the CAC of all the other ads that you see here. It was by far the like highest performing one. And I think the interesting thing that I took away from that was that really leaned into the demographic of like university students and kind of like younger people and stuff. And, I think she wrote another one that was like in Singlish, and like that did even better. And so was like, it seemed like the further we kind of targeted into that demographic, the like better these ads kind of like got and the more we like learned about them. So yeah, we just started kind of trying out kind of like weird stuff. You can see the stuff in like the other parts that I wrote is like, it's very much like what a company would say. And, there's this thing at the bottom right that is like, and it worked. And then we switched it to Singlish and it worked even better. Yeah. So I think don't be afraid to like try stuff.